just for everybody who's online, I want to welcome everybody to the Newtown Democratic Town Committee Training School. And I'll be your moderator, Michelle Koo. I'm the chair of the Newtown Board of Education, and I'm a member of our Newtown DTC. I'll just ask that everybody remain muted for now, and then we'll open it up a little bit later for more interaction. And then if you can just keep your voice, on mute until you're talking so that we don't have a lot of interference. So this is our session on mastering the art of door knocking and phone calling with Prerna Rao. Prerna is the founding attorney at Omni Law in Trumbull, Connecticut, and she is a canvassing enthusiast. She's been knocking on doors and calling on voters for over 10 years now, and she loves doing so because person-to-person connections are really most impactful when trying to engage voters. And I've personally have met many people who've been won over by Prerna's presence at their front door. So this will be a fun session. So thank you for being with us, Prerna.
Thank you for that intro. Yeah, so my name is Prerna Rao. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for about a decade. I started my practice in Trumbull a few years ago. I've lived in Newtown for 6 years. I have a kid starting Hedo Meadow in the fall. So all exciting stuff. And I've done a lot of canvassing and phone banking. In college, I used to do a lot of door knocking for Planned Parenthood and other organizations. And it was probably some of the most fun things that I've done in college, aside from the other fun college things that you do, as far as being able to get out there and get to know people, and being able to and just hearing from so many different people on issues that matter to you. So and I've been phone banking since 2016, when I think a lot of us decided to jump in a little bit more and get more involved. That's when I started phone banking a lot more, and it's very similar to door knocking in certain respects, but I obviously prefer door knocking. So why is it important? So it's not intuitive, but so the folks who are attending this and who've been involved in this campaign school, you guys are interested, you pay attention, you know that there's local elections coming up. Some of you are running for office. That's great. And you probably also know a lot of people who just don't follow the news or don't have time for that. And it's not because they don't care, they do, it's just there's other stuff going on that they've prioritized between work and life and family. It's, most people actually don't get very engaged in the civic process. And so there's been a lot of studies done about this. And one study has always kind of stood out to me, that it takes an average of 11 reminders or contacts with a voter for the average voter to remind them to vote, for them to actually remember to vote on election day. And so what that means is that on average, it takes 11 instances of a phone call coming in, or a text message, or seeing an ad on a billboard, or seeing an advertisement in the mail or on TV. They need 11 of those before they remember, oh, there's an election and I'm going to make time to do that. For me, by the time this election is over, I'm already looking at when's the next one? So, but that's just the type of person I am. But most people aren't like that. So, so some of these types of contacts and instances are more impactful than others, and door knocking is the most impactful. It's the most memorable. It's the one that it's the one that kind of draws the voter into the process and makes them feel most invested, because now they've been personally reached out to by somebody connected with a campaign, and they've dedicated some time listening to and thinking about what they've heard from you at their door. And so it's also the most personal connection. So I really value canvassing and going door to door as something that is possibly one of the most important things that can happen on any summer before any fall of election day, and then into the fall as well. It's also some of the only things that you can do over a long period of time. So advertisements, you only spend money and kind of maybe send out the mailers right before, some weeks before election day, things like that. But door knocking is one of those things. And I love that the weather is really nice outside right now, because it's, you know, you can look outside right now and think, wow, I wish I was outside doing something. This is a great thing to be able to do. Getting out there, getting fresh air, walking around, meeting new people. So, and with a mask for now, at least, you can still do that. And so, yeah, so let's see here. I'm gonna try to share my screen. All right, so just wanted to show you some, let's see. Oh, oops, I'm sorry. Sharing, I wanted to share the Google Doc. So as in preparation for this, I created, I dumped a bunch of Word documents and samples in the Google Drive, and I think everyone has access to that. So let's talk about preparation for going canvassing. So you want to kind of make sure that you have everything that you need for the day for a good, 2 to 4 hour, however long you think you'll be out there. So one is a script, something, your talking points essentially. So you want to make sure that you have something to reference and remind you what your talking points are, what your, the bullet points of your elevator pitch are. You also want to have some literature or lit. So these include flyers. Let's see, what I call "Sorry I Missed You" lit. So I'll go through some of the stuff that I have, and you'll get to see it later. But I make these cards every time I go canvassing to say, "Sorry I missed your door," or "I missed you when I knocked on your door. This is my name. This is what I'm running for." And then I can leave that at the door along with the other literature, so that they know that it's not some just drive-by, but that someone actually came to knock on their door. And a lot of times, if you have your van lists or your voter information with you, because you're not just going to go out without information, you're going to know exactly whose doors you're going to be knocking on, who lives there, what their voter registration is, if they're affiliated with Democrats, Republicans, or unaffiliated. Then you can actually personalize the literature as well. Contribution forms for when you have an enthusiastic door. And then I always keep a notepad or some paper to jot down questions or jot down information. So if someone says, so we role played a little bit at the beginning to kind of help put a lot of the stuff in context. So the second door that I knocked on was Michelle, who opened the door, and she seemed enthusiastic and wanted to learn more. So I would jot down, okay, Michelle at 123 Main Street has questions about the new zoning legislation that's coming out. I want to maybe circle back to her either with a phone call, or maybe I'll get her email, or knock on her door again, I'm not sure, to just maybe give her more information and address any certain concerns that she had. And then another good thing to do is keep flyers, or maybe have in your notes anything for upcoming events. So, if there's something coming up, a fair or a particular event or meet and greet that is happening in their neighborhood, kind of have that information with you. So one of the things that I used to do, for example, a lot as well before the pandemic, was if I knew that there was going to be a meet and greet happening in someone's neighborhood, and if I was door knocking there, I would have the flyer for the meet and greet, so that I could also say, hey, it was really nice to meet you. Hopefully you can come to this meet and greet and meet other candidates as well. So yeah, actually, I was wondering, instead of Michelle, if we could have just be able to ask questions during this. So I'm not.
Yeah. So why don't I'll look at our attendees, and I'm going to elevate everybody to panelists so that you can interact. It's going to take a second just to get to everybody, but we'll get there. And then I don't know if you want people asking questions in the chat or just to raise their hand and then.
Yeah, whatever people are comfortable with. I have the chat pulled up too. So what I was going to ask was, does anybody have any questions about the literature, the lit that you would carry with you while canvassing?
I'm hoping, I feel like we missed one of our attendees got dropped. So maybe give it a second. And so everybody, you can unmute yourself in the lower left-hand corner. There's a mute, unmute, so you can unmute yourself.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So obviously, you know, you could have like, you could just print out sheets of paper just off of your printer, be like, oh, here's my literature, right? And that's kind of like very low budget, you know, not very professional, versus spending the money to get like some sort of, you know, professionally done glossy mailer. Obviously the glossy mailer is going to be more expensive, but in your opinion, is there a difference? Is it one of those things where, you know, it's a nice to have the glossy mailer, but you could also do the paper, or is the straight off the printer from your house just so embarrassing and cringy that just don't do it at all?
That's a fantastic question. I'm going to show you some different stuff that all of which I've used. Let's see. So this I printed out on cardstock from my house back for the, I think most of this literature was from the 2017. And so I had this printed out, and then I was doing arts and crafts with my kids, so it was easy for me to sit there with a pair of kid scissors and cut these up into different sections. So this was easy. You know, the most huzzah I had on this was this flag, but it was just
so
this.
Prerna, just to interrupt you, we can't see what we're still looking at the, like, can you? It
says it's sharing my screen.
Is it, but it just shows the files that you have, not.
Yeah, you have to share that screen. Oh. So you're still sharing the old screen.
I'm so sorry. I got you. Hold on. Can you see it now?
There we go. Yep.
Okay. So this is one that I printed out on regular paper and sometimes cardstock if I had it, just like a resume paper. An easy thing just to have it printed out and then just cut up into pieces. If I know I was gonna, you know, just walk around a certain neighborhood, I had a bunch of them stacked up and it was easy to cut. That was a way to do it at home. And I will find another one that I, let's see here. Okay. And then this was a flyer that I had printed out at, trying to remember if it was, yeah, I think it was the UPS office, just on a slightly glossy paper. I think the total came out to, I had like, I don't know, 30 of these printed out, and the total came out to, it wasn't that much, like $10, $5. Any money that is spent out, you know, if you're spending money, you have to keep those receipts and make sure that your DTC treasurer knows about it. But if you want to simply just print out some items at home, if you have a decent color printer, I had this. And by the way, all of these I've uploaded onto that Google Drive. So if you want to change it around, you can just edit it. If you want to, you know, remove icons, add icons, whatever you want. So the answer is, I think that it should be something that isn't sloppy. So if you're okay with it, if you're looking at it thinking, okay, well, if this came to my door, what would I think of this? As long as it's clean and, you know, it doesn't have to be super fancy, I think it's fine. And I think that I think that being able to leave something at someone's door, whether you're able to meet with them or not, or if it's just literature that you're leaving because they didn't answer their door, but you can make it clear on there, like writing down, you know, hi, Mr. Rao, I'm sorry I missed you, but I'm running for this office and I wanted you to be able to look at this and hope to earn your support. If you're able to have a bunch of those handwritten out ahead of time and just fill in the names as you go with every door that you're not able to speak to anyone if they don't answer the door, I think that is, I would say disarming is the word I would use. I think it's endearing. I think that people value the fact that someone's taken the time out of their day to come try to talk to them about issues that matter to them. And so I think that as long as you can make it look, you know, not sloppy and something, you know, so yeah, so put some effort into it, I guess, but yeah. Any other questions about so I wanted to also point out one other thing, actually. So I asked some folks who had done a lot of their own literature and canvassing to give me some other samples. And so here's one that I really liked. So Allison ran for town council. And so these are her buttons, the template that she used for her buttons that she was able to actually upload online and get buttons printed out and mailed to her. And so she made these for herself to be able to wear when she went door knocking. And I think having something like that, especially if you're running for Board of Ed, running for town council, that does look professional. And I think it's totally worth having something like that.
I see Francis has a question.
Yeah. Hi. What about we've taken voter registration cards with us. Would that make it too cumbersome? Do you recommend it or not?
I would recommend having whatever you can with you if you're able to keep it organized, because I have had people ask, I think that's a great idea. People ask all sorts of different questions. Some people do say, oh, I'm not registered to vote. I just moved here. Actually, during the pandemic, there was a lot of, you know, the housing market is booming in the suburbs in Connecticut. So I think it would be, especially this time around, because there may be a lot of unregistered voters. I would also take donation forms. So that's part of the clipboard checklist. So if you're able to upsell the way, you know, if you have a friendly door, if you have someone who supports either Democrats or supports the candidate and they're enthusiastic about it, to have donation forms ready to go. I've had a handful of people be able to donate just on the fly when they're like, oh yeah, this sounds great. I'd love to be able to give $10 or something to the cause. So yeah, so registration cards, donation forms. So I know that Dan Rosenthal had a series of flyers printed out of his positions on various topics. And some people like to do that. So if you're door knocking for a candidate, take their materials with you as well. And if you are a candidate and if you have a policy oriented position that you're running for, like Board of Ed or Town Council, I think it would be really helpful to have that information as well. Other things to prepare, which are really important. And again, so this isn't just only my experience. I did try to ask several other people, and so all of this is combined wisdom. Is line someone up to go with you, have a buddy. So Michelle and I went also several times and it was a lot of fun. It's really good to help keep up your energy, to be able to talk and you know, brief and debrief. And it's just, you know, safety also. You know, sometimes I go out alone. I don't mind going out alone. You know, I'm that type of person, but you know, it's not for everybody. So it gets a lot easier if you're going with somebody. sometimes in neighborhoods like many around here in Newtown, Monroe, in this part of Connecticut, I would say, actually going out with a group of 3 might even be helpful. So 2 people to go out and knock at someone's door, so you have, you know, a friendly presence, and then a driver to be able to navigate, because sometimes it's hard to walk from door to door. Sometimes you just need to have a car, especially with long driveways. And so plan to go with somebody if possible. And people that are fun to go with, a lot of times are your kids, if it's age appropriate. Teenagers, you know, I actually went with my baby. He's 4 now. I wouldn't take him. I tried to take him last year and he tried to actually go into people's houses. So that was a whole nother distraction that I didn't need.
We call that deep canvassing.
Yeah, he came with me canvassing.
Yeah.
But when he was a baby, actually it was a lot of fun because, you know, I had him strapped to me. I absolutely needed to get out of the house. So it was a great way to do it. But, you know, I'm showing up at someone's house with a baby strapped to me. No one is thinking that I'm selling them anything. So everyone was very receptive. Everyone was super like, oh my God, he's so cute. What's going on? And so I felt like it was almost a lot easier to break the ice and have conversations with people when I had him strapped to me. So he was a really great political wingman. But a lot of people like taking their kids, you know, when babies and then skipping the little kid stage, but then when they're older, you know, and it's a great way to get your kids involved in the process as well, to have them kind of learn and firsthand what civic engagement looks like. Kids bring a great energy. And like I said, you know, people don't think that you're really trying to sell them anything. You know, you're not soliciting if you're there with your kids. Another person so friends, kids, and another really great option is the candidate or another candidate if you're the candidate too. So it shows if you're going on, this is something that I heard from several people. If you're going with another candidate, it almost feels more like teamwork, and it shows cohesion, and it shows that the slate that the Democrats are presenting is one of unity. It's one of people who are focused on working with each other and getting things done. So just kind of going up to somebody and saying, hey, we're both running for office. This person's running for this. I'm running for this. You know, it's a great way to be able to show that unified presence.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question about bringing your kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I either read or watched somewhere when it was talking about the differences between men and women running for office, and a lot of the double standards. So like when you were door knocking with your infant son, were you the candidate or were you a volunteer?
I was a candidate.
You were the candidate. Do you think that the perception of you having your kid so you think it was a positive perception?
I think so. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure there were a lot of people who were like, oh, mom, what is this? Young mom, you know, walking around. I think, however, that because when I was walking up to someone's house and there's a baby strapped to me, I think the last thing that anybody was expecting to come out of my mouth was, I'm running for office. I want to talk to you about the issues, right? I think that caught them off guard. And so they have a cute baby and suddenly a new topic in front of them. And so I think that there wasn't a perception of, I don't think there were any preconceived notions or biases at that time because it was unexpected. I'm a lawyer, so bringing up babies is a whole different topic when it comes to gender bias. But I think that local politics is also one that people imagine, you know, being very family oriented. And so I don't think it hurts at all.
Francis has got another question.
You don't think people will hold it against you because we're in the middle of a pandemic? I'm always concerned about the Republican judgmental attitude.
What are you going to do about them? So I think, so maybe don't bring a kid who's too young to wear a mask just yet. We're making a lot of really great improvements in a very short period of time. So hopefully that time will come. where we can kind of go back to the old way of being able to do things. But I think that we have been, even in the last election, we were able to successfully social distance. So I know that Rebecca had gone out plenty of times with a mask. You knock on the door and then you step back, and that's actually that's actually protocol, and no matter what, to be able to knock on. I always do this. So knock on the door. Usually there's a screen door, but knock on the door, and then I always take a few steps back because I don't want them to open up their door and suddenly I'm in their face. So I'm always, maintain a distance anyway. But if you're maintaining that respectful distance, you have the mask on, you're outside. I don't think that the concerns are that much. And frankly, I think it would be a little hypocritical for Republicans to judge on wearing masks and to. My understanding is that it's simply that the virus is not really the top concern. So I don't think that should be an issue. But like I said, if you maintain the distance and
yeah,
sorry?
Unfortunately, our town it is. The lawyer that brought the masks are dangerous to our children suit is actually one of our representatives, sadly, Fishbein.
So
yeah.
If you have someone who's grouchy at the door, that was actually the first example that we did with Miss Koo. If you have someone who's grouchy, there's always going to be something, right? It's going to be masks, or it's going to be you're with the wrong party, or that I would say I probably get maybe 3 grouchos like that per season. I wouldn't even say a day, but they're far and few in between, but when you do get them, move on. They're not going to vote for you. They're not going to vote for the Democrats. It doesn't matter. Just don't waste your time. Say thank you, goodbye, and keep it positive, and don't take it personally. It's not you. There is a question in the chat. How do you handle someone who opens doors clearly annoyed by your presence? So that's a great question. There are several ways to approach doors. So one, always you're ready, you have your elevator pitch ready. Walk around with your eyes open. See what's going on in the neighborhood. Is there construction? Is the house, looks like it's got a fantastic garden? Is there something unique about where your neighborhood or the street that you're walking on? And when you knock on their door, you can say, hey, that's a beautiful garden that you have, and immediately start kind of breaking that ice with them. And hopefully that works. And 9 times out of 10, it does. So just being friendly and immediately maybe complimenting something in their neighborhood or their garden, or, builds that bridge off the bat to be able to open up a conversation with them. If they're truly in the middle of something, I've knocked on doors where they're hosting and there's a dinner party happening in the background. All I do is, you're busy, here's my lit, remember to vote in November, and then I peace out. Because that actually is a segue to what I was going to say next is people are not going to remember what you say, but how you made them feel when you said it. It's a common idiom. So remember that the presence, just trying to be positive and be friendly, be comfortable with, be yourself, be comfortable. That's going to be the most important. If someone is too busy, or if someone is annoyed at having to have someone there, a lot of times people will be like, I have a no soliciting sign. I'll be like, I'm not selling anything. I'm just asking, I'm just reminding you to vote. And then, they'll say, oh, okay, you're reminding me to vote. Okay, I'll remember to vote. That's fine. I'm running for office. Here's my lit, goodbye. So if someone doesn't want to give you their time, that's okay. Squeeze in, maybe giving them the flyer, so at least they'll have it in their hands. They'll see the name, they'll remember your name. And for me, I have a funny sounding name. It's not a usual name. So it's really important for when I say Prerna, I know that people are like, what is that? But hopefully when they see it and they hear it, then they'll remember it. And so, it's be able to squeeze that in and get out of there. You don't have to have a deep heart to heart with every door. And in fact, I actually don't encourage that unless someone's really open to it. So I'm going back to my preparation for going out. Comfortable shoes, water bottle and a snack. And here's something that I liked, a suggestion, which was plan something for after you're done, to give yourself something to look forward to give yourself the incentive to kind of keep going and kind of make sure that if you have a grumpy door, if you have a lot of doors that never answered, that you just, okay, you know what, I'm just gonna, whatever, have dinner with my spouse and I'm looking forward to it. You know, we're going out tonight, it'll be fun. So those are different ways. One other person I forgot on my list to try to get when you're going out canvassing, and this is something that you can really coordinate with your DTC, is going with someone who lives in that town, or not town, lives in that neighborhood or that street. It is actually really, really effective because, especially in our small towns, people tend to know each other. People tend to remember all the houses that are there in their neighborhood and streets. So if you can have someone that can take you around and say, hey, you know, I live in the house next door. I live down the street. My house is the red one over there. Hey, nice to meet you. Or maybe they already know each other. I wanted to introduce you to my friend, Prerna, who's running for zoning board. You know, and I was hoping that she could just kind of tell you about herself and hopefully have your support in November. That is usually also really memorable and effective. And also that neighbor will remember you every time they drive by that other person's house or think about their neighbor. So it's a great way to kind of get to be memorable with somebody, is to go with somebody who lives in that neighborhood, who lives on the street that you're canvassing on. And so that's something that you can absolutely coordinate with DTC, or just ask your friends who live around town, hey, can I go around with you? Will you set aside a Saturday morning, like today, a beautiful day outside, to just walk around town with me, and all you have to do is introduce yourself and introduce me, and I'll take it from there. So that's my segment on preparing for it. You'll have lists with you. So there was a section on using the Van app or the minivan app. So Van will tell you, and it can plan it out by street for you, who lives, you know, what the house address is, who lives there, if they're Democrats, Republicans, or unaffiliated, their age, and phone number. And our voter registration lists on paper should also have that, depending on what you use.
So a question about the people. So you have a list of who's in the household when you go to the door. Do you ask for a specific person when somebody comes to the door, or how do you deal with that piece?
Sure. So I only do that if I see the list and it says that there's D's and R's living together, and I try to find the D. I try to find the Democrat because, well, that's how I try to do it, especially when I'm canvassing for other people. So this time around, I'm not up for re-election, but I will be canvassing for somebody else. And when I'm doing that, I want to make sure I'm efficient about it. I'm not the candidate directly, so I don't want to sit there getting into discussions and debates with anybody who's not immediately on board with me. My focus is on turnout, and I want to make sure I'm reminding as many people as possible and building that memorable experience for them so that they remember in November to get out the vote. So I would be focusing on D's, and that's really the only time that I ever ask for anybody in particular. When I was running for zoning board, I don't know why it's a political position, to be completely honest. It's interpretation of statutes. And it's about, you know, zoning enforcement. It has really nothing to do with generating like policy-oriented ideas where it would matter what your ideology is or what your affiliation is. So I was completely comfortable talking to Republicans and Democrats. So I tried to just knock generally on basically every door. That was my style. It's not everybody's style, and that's fine. But in general, I try not to. Also, the voter register, those lists aren't entirely 100% accurate. A lot of times they'll have people who may have already left the house, you know, or former spouses, things like that. So I try not to make it too awkward. Like I said, the only time is if I see, oh, the male is a registered Republican, the female is a registered Democrat, and if a guy answers the door, I'll just ask for, hey, is Mrs. So-and-so home? Again, but when I was canvassing for myself, I talked to everybody.
Quick question, kind of following up on that. This was a question that was asked by the guy who did the presentation for Minivan. They were called Gatekeeper husbands. The Republican husband who opens the door, you said, oh, I'm looking for what? Oh, what are you here for? I'm like, oh, for the election. Oh, well, my wife will make the decision when she gets to it. You don't need to talk to her. What's your approach to answering those individuals?
I've actually never had that experience, but I'm not surprised if they occur. I have had a lot of people. In fact, I've had more times when the wife answers, and just the way our demographics are, it often, in these split households, it tends to be the woman who's the Democrat and the man who's the Republican, more often than not. But I feel like I've had more, at least the memories that stick out in my mind right now are the ones where I've spoken to the wife, and then I'm like, okay, well, if there's anyone else in your household, then please let them know as well. And you know, because you both live here, so you both can vote. And then I've gotten he's not going to be interested, honey, don't worry, you know. So, however, like I think it's, you know, you're not going to convince them to change their marriage and the type of person they are. You're not going to convince him to suddenly be a considerate person and be like, no, let your wife have the information, right? So sneak in the lit is really the most you can do. Hopefully he comes in and just puts it on the dining table and walks away, and maybe she'll say it later. Alternatively, hopefully you have some way of keeping notes while you're going around. So if you think, hey, you know what, if she's held on to that Democratic registration and he seems really aggressive about this stuff, maybe she is someone that I can reach. Maybe phone bank her later when you're getting closer to the election, and you're not really focusing on knocking on doors as much, but rather phone banking, because you can have more hits that way. Maybe that's a person that you remember to phone bank later and say, hey, I actually knocked on your door before. I wasn't able to talk to you. I talked to your husband, and would love to have your support, something along those lines.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. I'm just scrolling down my list. One of the benefits of door knocking versus phone banking versus mailers, advertising, meet and greets, is that you, even versus social media, is that you tend to hear from people that you normally would not hear from, or that who may not have otherwise reached out to you. So if you think about all the other various kinds of reaching out to potential voters, meet and greets are people who want to hear from you. You know, by the time they've decided to come to the meet and greet, you might already have their support by that point, because, you know, they know somebody who's kind of inviting them out there, and they've already decided to take the time out of their day to hear you out. And, you know, as long as you're nice about it and civil, you'll have their support most likely. So, you know, so meet and greets it's someone who's kind of coming to you. Yeah, phone banking, it's, you know, it's not as enriching or an open of a conversation as meeting someone face to face. And then everything else really depends on the person kind of engaging with. So social media or an advertisement, kind of deciding to like go look at something, go log on the website, or check out your Facebook page. So door knocking is one of those few things where someone who may have never really thought about local elections, or may only be voting for the top ticket for selectman's office and then nothing else, or only vote once every 4 years in presidential elections, but otherwise aren't engaged. Door knocking is a great way to hear from those people and to kind of draw them into the process and get them invested. So I really value door knocking, and if possible, phone banking you can absolutely do. You can do in bad weather, you can do in good weather, you can do closer to the election. Door knocking is one of those things, though, that I think has the most impact, and that you can do, you know, it's the window of time to do it is you have to space it out. It has to be on good days. It has to be on the weekends. For it to be really impactful. And I mean, you could do it on the weekdays, but you're not going to get very many people home before it starts to get dark. So yeah, so definitely make time for it. And it's a great way to reach voters who you might not otherwise have drawn into the process. Let's see.
Can I
Yes.
ask you a question about the time investment that you have at each, you know, you can spend a lot of time talking with each person, and do you have a sort of sense of how do you judge what's long enough, what's too long? How do you space out your time with each of the people that you talk with?
So different people would answer that question differently. As I've mentioned before, I value efficiency. To me, it's about turnout. There's certain people I know I'm never going to convince. So once they start trying to debate and argue with me, unless they're just kind of engaging to try to see a different perspective, maybe they're thinking, oh, well, you know, I think I'm against the zoning thing, but what are your thoughts? You know, if they're really trying to have an open conversation. But if they're just like, well, I don't like it, why do you support this? Or, you know, well, how do you feel about, you know, the do nothing Democrats? Once you know that they're not going to vote for you, don't waste your time. Get out of there. It's about turnout, but don't get out of there mean. Get out of there. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I gotta just move along, and you know, just it was really nice to meet you, and then move on. If there's someone who is actively engaged, try to make that time useful. If you know you already have their support, if you know that they're most likely to vote for Democrats, hopefully down ballot, confirm that, right? So like, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for, you know, saying that you're going to support me. Can I also have your support for the rest of the down ballot candidates? They're awesome. So like, try to use that time to upsell and use that time that you have where they may be hanging out and, you know, are happy to talk to some friendly person that just came to their door, which actually doesn't happen a lot. And try to use that to upsell. We call it upsell in the business world, but yeah, get them to commit and think about down ballot voting, get them to commit and think about going to maybe events or meet and greets or checking out maybe a debate that the Newtown V is hosting, or possibly getting involved with the DTC and volunteering on their own if they have, especially if they have young kids, not young kids, older kids, I meant to say, who I actually got a few teenagers roped into it when I had knocked on their door, and the parents were like, oh, well, yeah, actually we're really excited, and you know, how can we support? And I saw that they had teenage kids in the background. I'm like, you guys can go canvassing, if your kids want to, and they're like, get out, you know, like, you should sign up. So try to make that time productive. And then if you think it's just going on and on into a conversation, hey, I love talking, I think that's obvious right now, but if you think that this conversation is just going on and suddenly you're only talking about, well, you happen to have kids in the same school and you're just talking about irrelevant stuff, remember you're out there, and you dedicated this time to get out the vote for yourself or for the candidate that you're canvassing for. You can absolutely always catch up with someone that you're friendly with already later. You know, you don't have to cut the conversation short, because at the same time you want to have them remember that conversation or remember to vote. Try to end at least on that line, and then I'll also try to time it so that, you know, you're able to check some more names off your list, you know, while you go on. And if you go with another person, it'll be easier to have more structure to that. If you're just there by yourself, it's easier to get roped into like a never-ending conversation. But if you're with somebody, especially if there's someone sitting in the car waiting for you to drive away to the next door, it's a lot easier to have that structure. One piece of advice that I liked from somebody is that even if you're running uncontested, don't act like it. Act like you still need to earn everybody's vote, because people will remember how you made them feel. People will remember that you made them feel like their vote mattered to you. And next time you're running for maybe a different office, or if there is someone running against you later on, it'll matter, because the likelihood that you're going to be hitting the same doors every election is very low. So you'll hopefully have their support the next time around, 2 years down the line, 4 years down the line. So really quickly about phone banking. So the reason I kind of dedicated a lot of this to door knocking is because I think, one, obviously I find it more important. I think it's more impactful. It also requires a little bit more prep work. So, but there's some things that carry over into phone banking as well. You still need to prepare some talking points and a brief elevator pitch and some sort of a little script that you can stick to. You still need to have your lists of people to call, so it can, again, be by van or be by the voter registration list that you'll get from DTC. You still need to kind of be ready to bring that same energy, so don't be tired. Make sure you have your coffee and you're well fed, and I always imagine myself as if I'm gearing myself up to go door knocking again, but when I'm phone banking, to really kind of bring that energy, and they can hear your smile. Everyone can hear a smile on the phone. So try to really like have that energy and smile when you're talking, so that they can hear the positivity and remember that, hopefully, before they hang up. Your elevator pitch for phone banking is going to be a lot more succinct than if it was in person, at least in person. If I'm at someone's door and I'm not leaving, I have their attention still. And I can kind of maybe squeeze in some more stuff, maybe ask them if they have questions, and watch them think and possibly answer any questions that might come to their mind. On the phone, I find that most of the time people are doing something else when they answer. They have the phone, but you don't have their undivided attention. And so use the time that you have on the phone with them as efficiently as possible. Keep that message succinct. Hit the main talking points. Hey, there's an election coming up in November. I live in Newtown. I'm hoping to earn your support. This is my name. And then if it seems like you have their attention, or if they seem more open-minded to asking questions or knowing more information, you can launch into it. If not, at least you got the main stuff out there before they have to go and move on with the rest of their day. Expectations in general for phone banking is that most of the time people don't pick up. So I find myself leaving a lot of voicemails. Not everyone likes to leave voicemails. I like to leave voicemails. And for that, definitely have a script, because you don't want to be making up a voicemail on the fly. Everyone knows what it feels like to leave a voicemail when you're like, that was one of the worst voicemails I've ever left in my life. So try to have a script ready for reading out, so that when you're leaving voicemail after voicemail, you have it. One valuable thing that I really like is to be able to identify what polling location they go to in the message, either on the phone with them or leaving a voicemail, or in person. So being able, especially on the phone when you're leaving a message, so when you're able to say something like, hey, you're going to be, my name is Prerna, I'm running for zoning board. I live here. I always I feel like I have to say I live here in town, because people don't always, I get a lot more of the, are you really from around here? With my name, I feel like, than maybe some other folks. But if I say I'm running for the Newtown ZBA, and especially if I'm paying attention to who I'm calling, if they live like 2 streets down from me, I try to throw that into the message or throw that into the call. And then I say, hey, remember to vote. The election is coming up. And by the way, you'll be voting in Hedda Meadow. Just wanted to remind you, or you'll be voting in Reed or something like that. So just being able to have, no, I'm sorry, it's not Reed, the middle school. So just being able to have some useful information for them. So it's more personalized, and it doesn't sound like they're getting robocalls, or, and it's catered to them, and it's a much more personalized message. And so that way you're able to make it have some flavor of it being personalized the way you would otherwise if you were there in person with them, if you're leaving messages. Not all phone banking programs allow you to leave messages. So I don't like those, because those get very intense, because it's call after call with only people who pick up. But I think that people screen their calls, but then they get their voicemails transcribed and sent to them as a text message. So I do like to leave messages for that reason, because I know at some point they're going to get it either as a voicemail or as a text message transcription. Anybody have any questions about any of that?
I have a quick question that's half about door knocking, half about phone banking. As far as targeting voters, are there some voters with either a voting history or a partisan lean who are like, these are voters who ideally we want to reach out to via phone call versus via door knocking?
Yes. So one of the things that I think Newtown DTC does well is that at the beginning of each cycle, Eric hands out lists. Did we do it digitally last time, Michelle? I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, I can't recall. I think we've done both.
I think for Rebecca's campaign, we had a digital list. It was like maybe a Google Drive or something. I'm not sure if I'm remembering it correctly. But the point being is that that ahead of time, one that I do like is you get, we have these books, or you can have the digital list and go through it and see, if you recognize names, and find those people that for example, hey, I know these people, they're all on my kids' soccer team, they all know me from these events. So if I reach out directly to them, maybe, and I always try to phrase it and would love to have your support. So it's not impinging on their time, or they're, like demanding, I'm not demanding their support, but I'm asking for it and to just support their vote. I'm not asking for, donations or anything like that, but reaching out to people that in that manner, through these lists ahead of time, and trying to do that before it starts becoming a very much more systemized process of calling people or knocking on doors. So one thing I did that I'm happy that I did was keep track of all of the streets that I had door knocked on in general. So I know I just happen to have it in my file here, that which streets that I've gone every time I've run for office or canvassed. And then I know that later when I'm writing out postcards, that the places that I've gone to several times, if I'm writing postcards and say, hey, like I've knocked on your door before, and remind them of that in my message on the postcard, hopefully they'll remember me from the time that I appeared at their door. So I tried to use the lists proactively in that way as well. So if I know I've talked to them before, or I've possibly gone on their street, then that's going to be a priority for me to remind them the next time around when I'm sending out postcards or calling them.
We have just a few minutes left, so I don't know if there's some things you want to get in before we finish up.
Sure. I'm looking through my notes here when I talk to other folks.
Or questions that folks have before we finish.
Let's see.
I'll just note that I've noticed that you've said a couple times that if you run into somebody who is somewhat grumpy, that your go-to is to say, just remember to vote. Like we can all agree that you should be voting, whether it's Republican or Democrat. It's sort of a positive way of interacting with people.
And you know what? I feel like it's also unexpected when someone, because I have had, again, not a lot, I think maybe altogether 5 people, if I can count on one hand, people who have ever said you're at the wrong door, or you're with the wrong party, and like kind of bit not hostile, but not as civil, I guess, as you might expect somebody in person to be. Again, 5 out of, I don't know, 1,000 doors. So even in that sense, I don't think they expect me to say, well, I still care that you vote, like I care that you should just get out there. I'm not here to tell you how to vote. I'm trying to convince you to kind of go a certain way, but I'm not trying to, say that you shouldn't vote if you're not voting for me. You're voting how I want you to. To me, it's a civic process. There's only 2 things that you can do as an American citizen that no one else in the world can, and that's jury duty and voting. And those are the only 2. And jury duty is asked of you, so please do jury duty when you got the opportunity, when juries come back in Connecticut. But and I'm a civil litigator, so I always value when people are actually, not hemming and hawing. This is my pitch to please do jury duty when you can. It's really valuable and an important service. But yeah, and voting is the only other thing that you can do as an American citizen. So I think it's really important. And I genuinely believe that if everybody actually voted, that I think, that the outcome is necessarily fair, that the outcome is necessarily probably what's, in the collective wisdom and probably the right path to be able to go on. So yeah, and I think that just being civil like that and showing that you're not there it's not slimy politics or anything, but it's, you're there to civically engage with them, I think is a good note to end on in general.
Yeah.
Whether they're friendly or not.
Maybe that's a good note to end on here. I just want to, before we wrap up, just remind everybody that there are opportunities to knock on doors currently or make phone calls. We do have several races in Connecticut that are happening right now, and in our Prerna and I live here in Newtown, but in Monroe, there's a race that could use everybody's door knocking and phone banking skills. And then I also wanted to mention that yes, Nick Kapoor. So if you missed any other of the campaign school sessions, I believe that you can sign up to view those at a later time. So if you want to do that, I believe that you can do that. Thank you. So I see phone banks are Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday for Nick Kapoor. Thank you. All right. So if you want to sign up for any of the other campaign school sessions, those can be done through the Newtown DTC site as well.
And I also want to offer, if anybody ever wants to go canvassing and doesn't know who to ask, I'm always available. I'll go with anyone. I'll go anywhere with anyone.
Just give you an email, drop you an email and say, I'm ready to go out.
I'll put it in the chat right now.
I love it because it is a great way to learn is to go out with somebody who's experienced and knows how to do it. So thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge about door knocking with us. We very much appreciate it, and wish you a happy weekend. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.